Hey everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the Scopus Research Hub. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating piece of literary analysis, one that truly challenges how we think about disability, identity, and, the incredible power of storytelling. So the paper we're looking at today is called Unsettling the Norm, a posthumanist reading of sameness and differences in Kathryn Erskine's Mockingbird. And right off the bat, you know this is a big deal because it's published in the high-impact Q1 ranked journal, Theory and Practice in Language Studies. That tells us it's a really significant contribution to the field. And it all starts with this incredibly powerful question. How can a children's book, of all things, actually shake up our deepest, most fundamental assumptions about what it even means to be human? It's a huge question, and it's exactly what this research sets out to explore. All right, so here's our game plan for unpacking this. First, we'll look at why this study is so important, the research gap it fills. Then, we'll get into the main theory it uses, the posthumanist perspective. After that, we'll dive right into the novel and meet its protagonist, Caitlin, follow her journey from exclusion to empathy, and finally, we'll wrap up with the paper's major findings on how literature can actually create change. So, what makes this research so fresh and so needed? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The paper points out that other studies on Mockingbird have mostly looked at it through, say, a linguistic lens or a very medicalized model of disability. This study does something completely different. It steps away from just diagnosing a character and instead uses a posthumanist lens to look at how our entire society is organized. And that brings us right to the heart of the paper's framework, posthumanism. Now, this is a perspective that really goes head-to-head with some of the older, exclusionary ideas of classical humanism. And the contrast here is just night and day. See, classical humanism often held up this idea of normal as being perfect, whole, and without disability. If you didn't fit that very narrow mold, you were seen as, as other or even less than. Posthumanism comes along and says, wait a minute. It doesn't try to erase our differences. Instead, it pushes us to redefine what it means to be human, focusing on our connections with each other and making space for everyone. To really get this, the paper brings in this incredible idea from the philosopher Martin Buber, his concept of the I-thou relationship, and it's just beautiful. He's essentially saying that we don't become who we are in a vacuum. We become ourselves through our relationships with others. All the real, meaningful parts of life happen in those moments of connection. It's about we, not just me. Okay, so that's the big theory. How does the paper actually use it? Well, it performs a really close textual analysis of Kathryn Erskine's fantastic novel, Mockingbird. The story is told entirely from the perspective of Caitlin, a 10-year-old girl with Asperger's syndrome who's dealing with the unimaginable grief of losing her brother in a school shooting. Now, to really walk in Caitlin's shoes, we have to grasp a concept the paper discusses called theory of mind. It's basically the ability to grasp that other people have their own thoughts, feelings, and points of view that are different from yours. For someone with Asperger's, this can be a real challenge. It's sometimes called mind blindness, which makes navigating social situations incredibly tough. And this is what makes the book so incredibly effective. Erskine's choice to write in the first person is just brilliant. It puts us, the readers, directly inside Caitlin's head. We experience the world exactly as she does, with her logic, her confusion, her unfiltered honesty. The paper argues this isn't just a storytelling trick, it's a powerful tool for building genuine empathy. So because we're right there with her, we get to see her entire journey as she moves from feeling completely isolated towards finding real connection and understanding. And it's this journey that the paper analyzes so carefully. Let me give you a perfect example from the book that the paper just breaks down so well. A classmate, Rachel, gets a scratch, and she asks Caitlin if it looks terrible. Now, while all the other kids are trying to be polite, Caitlin just says what she sees, the honest, literal truth. And the results? Rachel bursts into tears, and another kid yells at Caitlin for being mean. This one scene just perfectly captures that communication gap. What Caitlin intends as helpful honesty lands as cruelty. It's this exact kind of disconnect, this gap in understanding that posthumanism is so focused on trying to bridge. So how does she move past moments like that? The paper charts her growth in these really clear stages. It starts with isolation, right? The kids call her weird. But then, with help from her school counselor, Mrs. Brooke, she starts to actively learn about empathy. And that opens the door for her to build a real friendship with another student, Michael. And ultimately, it leads to her own self-acceptance, to realizing her way of seeing the world isn't wrong, it's just hers. And all of this analysis, this entire journey with Caitlin, it all leads to the paper's huge final point, revealing the profound social function that literature can have. This is really the central argument of the whole study. Okay, so let's boil this down. What are the big insights here for researchers and academics? The study shows that stories like Mockingbird are more than just stories. They're powerful tools. They can actively take apart harmful stereotypes. They build empathy by literally letting us experience otherness from the inside out. They validate neurodiverse experiences, which is so crucial for self-identity. And maybe most importantly, they challenge all of us to move past just tolerating difference and to start genuinely valuing it. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. If it's true, as this research suggests, that stories have the power to shape our social reality, then what kind of responsibility do we have? What stories must we tell and teach and share if we want to build a more ethical and truly inclusive world? This study makes such a compelling case for why this kind of analysis matters. The full research paper is available in the description for your reference and citation. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Scopus Research Hub.